but I'm just interested to see what you guys are offering.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's well, we're curious to know what you know as well, because I think that's it's a very mercurial area, is it not, Beth? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, this unless any other guys would like to speak now, but it might be a good opportunity to introduce ourselves a little bit more formally. So particularly if you've only just had a chance to look at the link. So I'm Beth Senior, and I work at the School of Digital Arts, which is part of Manchester Metropolitan University. And I've got a background in quite a few things, but mainly games art and animation and narrative. So the school is very much about future storytelling, and the work that we do with our students is very much about that idea of digital storytelling using different technologies, as well as more traditional storytelling. So the idea, Johanna, of is very much that idea that digital storytelling, what things can we leverage to look at digital storytelling as technology moves apace.
Yeah.
And I'm Michaela Schonler, and I come in as very much an individual writer myself. I'm an author. My first novel came out in 2018, Dead Dogs and Angels. And after that, I was kind of playing around with it was quite a deep novel, so I wanted to do something fun, and I wanted to write something for young people. I was thinking, what would I have loved to have read when I was kind of 18, that sort of age. And then from that novel, which isn't published yet, but next year, watch this space, from that novel came this idea of, putting a kind of spin-off online that could encourage young people to actually engage with the story before the book is even out. And so then I think it's on the kind of conference stuff, but it's called Changeling, and that was funded by the Arts Council, and it's very, very simple. I looked at it yesterday and I was like, it just seems so basic, and it took me so long, but it was a really good introduction for me into looking at this dissection between our writing and technology, and we will talk a little bit about that as well. And Beth, as she's told you, is kind of this is her expertise, so we're absolutely so lucky to have her.
Thank you. So shall we with I know that we're going to have a couple of people more trickling, and also please feel free, or not, but please feel free to turn your cameras on to have a chat with us. It's always nice to see people's faces.
Nice to see people.
Yeah. But yeah, so the are we going to share the presentation now?
Yes, thank you. What? You want me to actually do something?
Tell them what we're doing.
Oh my gosh. Shocking. All right. Hold on a second. This is if I start singing to myself, it's what I do when I'm as
part of my talking of habits that you develop in lockdown. A little caveat that I said that I would share is the fact that I have a very vocal cat, and who's young and very playful, so there might be a point where I have to introduce him into the conversation to save myself being bored, basically. So he gets very playful.
So Beth, are you seeing the digital storytelling with our beautiful photographs on it?
Yes, I am.
Yay! Aren't we gorgeous?
You are, actually.
Well, I don't know about Beth, but mine may have a filter or two, and certainly the sunlight helps.
I use mine for every profile because it was done by somebody else when I wasn't looking, which is why it worked.
Ah, yes, that fabled. Okay, so take it away, Beth.
Okay. So what do we mean by digital storytelling? Like I said, my background is very much that kind of digital visuals, but actually what I always talk about is how important it is to realize that it doesn't matter what your discipline is, but it's about your narrative, whether that be a personal narrative or, you know, an external, whether it be fiction, non-fiction, etc., etc. So there's lots of different ways that you can express that, and what we're looking at today for you guys as more traditional writers, or who, you know, who present or recognize yourself as digital writers, is what kind of, you know, platforms that you can think about that that would come up as digital storytelling. So what we would like you to actually do is to have a little chat, either turn your cameras on or have in the chat. And if you look at the chat, Kayla's put in there, you know, what do you guys write? You know, so what do you write at the moment? Where are you coming from? You know, so a little bit more about you, rather
maybe
than
what
all about us.
Yeah, and also what sorry to interrupt you. Also, what about what when you saw this workshop, what was it that you immediately thought of digital? What did you think? Did you think, oh, I could put something on, you know, on a specific social media platform?
Yeah.
Abe writes narrative non-fiction, short stories and poems.
Yeah, lovely.
Tanya is a parenting coach, and she writes blogs and posts for social media,
which in themselves can be very, you know, very narrative driven. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we have Hafsa from Manchester, poetry, short stories and librettos. You've got to tell me what a librettos are.
Fantastic. So there's some really sort of like nice approaches and different approaches, which I always love to see, that people are like, yeah, I come from different, you know, different areas. So we wanted to talk as well to you about
sorry, can I ask before you go on then? So for my simple mind, does digital mean online?
It can be, and certainly when we look at how technology is moving, we do tend to think of it in terms of online. But digital, for me, when I talk to people about digital storytelling, it's more that idea of off a physical page, just something that's off a physical page. Okay. So you know, and is consumed, for want of a better word, on some other way than on paper. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's exactly it, because you might have somebody who creates an app that tells a story.
Yes.
Okay.
And you might be using your phone. Many years ago, I worked with a woman called Fee Plumley, and this is like in the late 90s, and she and her partner created remember when we had the bricks, the phones, the Nokia bricks with just a few lines. She created a project that was called the Phone Book, and writers submitted, I was one of the writers, submitted their stories, and it was just long enough to be on one of those first texts. So you know, and that was specific, and that the story that you wrote couldn't fit into any other thing apart from that.
Got Monienne saying, I'm not published. I used to write poetry when I was younger, currently writing short stories and want to write a play. And then the question, podcast. Yes, podcast is, like I say, for me, digital storytelling is just all the different ways that and technologies that we can use to get our narratives out into the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I said, my background is much more that kind of visual storytelling, but you know, there's lots of, and we will be discussing today and you know, doing things with you today that look at that combination of more traditional, you know, approaches like literature, and then but using digital platforms and technology to express those narratives.
I'm going to move along to the next slide, because I think that that might be really helpful in terms of breaking some of this down.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about, you know, what is publishing digitally versus digital born. So if something is only made for the digital consumption, then I would say that's something that's digital born. If there's something that you, for example, you might write a play and then you might be able to put it on show in on a social media platform or a discourse or something, or you know, that would be something that is you're publishing digitally. So in terms of the competition, you know, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but we are looking for the ways in which you're using the platform and the technology, and does it fit with the form itself. So I've got up here Twitter. I mean, there's an actual thing called is it called Twitter? Oh, I can't say it now. Twitter literature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go with that.
And yeah, I mean, the days when it used to be 230 characters, I think even The Guardian got involved and asked a load of writers to kind of put their stories in. So there's for example, there's Twitter stories. You can use things with Instagram and Facebook. So for example, did anybody engage with on Instagram? They had the Humans of New York. Did anybody hear about that?
Yeah. I follow.
Yeah.
And they're really interesting. They're really interesting ways to kind of sum up people's lives, but it's done so poetically and with a caption. You know, the photographs are always captioned with the story. But great. The latest one I think was the black man that had a screwdriver pushed through his eye, and it just generated so much interest on Instagram, and I think then it's gone out onto all other platforms as well.
And I think that they're even thinking about books and all sorts. I mean, so there's that, but what's particularly interesting about that range is that because you've got Instagram and you've got the ability to scroll several photos together, but what I'm also finding really interesting was the serialization of stories. So this is probably a few years ago. I don't know if you remember the woman who used to be a singer, and she had a top floor apartment in New York. And she started talking about all of these kind of very well-known famous people. But then the person who was doing would basically say 1 of 6, and you'd only have one. And people were just like, we need to hear the story. And it's this idea, and you can go back to Twitter, is like, you can serialize things in very small chunks, and you know, you can really play with that technology. What do you think about that, Beth?
Yeah, I mean, I like I've talked a lot with it's a slightly different thing because it's more video, but it's still about narratives. But we talk a lot about work with the, you know, with the proliferation of mobile devices, that we talk about citizen journalism, you know, and this idea that we can all capture our stories, and we're always documenting, and we often document we very rarely document with just the visuals. I tend to, because I like to just have that be the commentary sometimes, but as a general rule, people will, you know, particularly if it's not video, particularly if it is an image, then there will be a caption to go with that. And the way that narrative builds, and the way that it's accessible to us all to be storytellers, you know, it's not, because people kind of, you know, when you work with people, sometimes they go, well, I can't write, or I can't tell a story. So it's like, well, actually, there's lots of different ways to tell stories. But yeah, we've just been working with people on a big exploration of exactly that, and what happens if you have to retell a story or reimagine, and you know, those different ways of getting that creativity and that confidence in that creativity. And sometimes that, you know, things like Insta stories and Facebook stories are a perfect vehicle for people. because we are all storytellers. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what the technologies really give us is the ability to collaborate, and maybe as people of color as well, it gives us a way of leveling a playing field in a way. Not completely, I'm not a dreamer here, but I still think that we're able to the ways that we speak in our communities, the way we engage with our people, we can actually be more playful with that. Things like creating Facebook stories or Instagram stories, and being able to do it in a way that you're comfortable with, because at the moment, it feel quite intimidating. But if you think about doing it with a group of you, something that is both sharing the kind of limelight and the, oh, don't look at me, but also sharing the ideas. And sometimes there's a kind of serendipitous offering that comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back to you, Beth.
Yeah, I was just about to pick up that point and just sort of say that idea, and also because it leads quite nicely into what we're going to be doing in a few minutes, but that idea of collaboration is really interesting, and the idea of collaboration to build stories, and also the idea of sharing where a narrative can take you is really important. And there are so many different technologies out there now that allow us to do that it's actually really exciting as well.
100%. I'm gonna go over to the next slide.
Yeah.
And here we go.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that we thought would be really good for you guys here today is to that idea of the idea of moving into that digital world and moving from a passive interaction from your audience and versus an interactive interaction. So there's this, as it says there, I'm not actually going to flat out read out the slide, but there's this idea of what we call lean back versus lean forward. So lean back means it's a passive interaction. Lean forward, there's some sort of engagement from your audience in the process. And as we've digital literature or digital storytelling does actually give you that opportunity to change how your audience will interact with your story from off the page to making them much more involved in the process. So when we were talking about platforms before, we have different writing platforms, and each one has different expectations and considerations. So I'm actually going to pose some questions so you can think about things like, well, what about if the screen that's being used? What's the difference between giving somebody a story to look at if it's on a mobile versus giving somebody a story to read if it's on a Kindle? And whether that app has been optimized. I quite often sit around and realize that I no longer just watch television. In fact, if I want to not be doing something else at the same time, I need to go to a cinema, because when I'm at home, my phone is in my hand, and in breaks when I watch terrestrial television, or if I'm streaming, I'm even worse. IMDb, I'm surprised I haven't got shares in the thing. I'm forever stopping what I'm watching and just checking who everyone is. And it's almost like being in permanent research mode, even when you're just trying to engage. Because if something is really passive, I'm a gamer, but if something is really passive, it's almost like I need to be doing something else at the same time. So I'm looking for all these different inputs. So if an app has been optimized, even something as simple as reading a book, it's not necessarily the same across all these different devices. The device itself can alter the experience. And it's nice to think about if people are people participating, or could they participate in that narrative? Could the story use its platform to leverage a more interactive experience from your reader? And what if they are actually using multiple screens? How could that change the story? The story structure, its narratives, the outcomes that you are giving people. So, it's just a way to start thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to deliver something on a platform, what is it about that platform that I could leverage to get people to engage in this story? which leads us, I think, quite nicely onto something that we'd like you to do.
Yes, writers, we want you to write shock horror.
Dun, dun, dun. So this is a workshop. So it's not to just listen to us. So what we're going to do, Radhika is going to put you into some breakout rooms for us. I've got several things going on here and several dialogue boxes open, but I think it should be, I think there should be enough of you. I think even if it's only a couple of people to go into rooms.
Yeah, that's fine.
And
just give me 1 second. Okay.
And I'm also gonna, just sorry to interrupt you, Beth. I have put what you was some little bits of what you were saying in the chat, but I'm also going to cut and paste your instructions in the chat.
Okay, good.
If anybody wants to sort of keep hold of them, just in case you get into the break room and you can't remember.
yeah, because that quite often happens. It's like, what are we doing in here again? So the idea that you use that chat room to develop a story. And as it says there, it's quite nice to start with Joe, because Joe is neutral. So Joe can be anything or anyone. Joe doesn't even need to be a humanoid. It's entirely up to you. But it's nice to add 3 words. And as we've got a little bit of an exploration there, clearly it was, I don't go around asking people to write about Joe with me, but there's some ideas there about, a little pointer of what could happen to Joe. So take it in turns. So it's a little bit like that exquisite corpse idea, where except with words rather than a picture, and you get to see what came before as well.
Yeah. And you're writing into the chat box.
Yeah. So you're writing into the chat, and you're taking it in turns within that chat room to write a few words. So that is just one participant, but obviously it would be between you, and do it in a round, a bit like it's just like a story in a round. It's a story in the round. So a call and response kind of idea. And like it says, if it stopped making sense, start again. Or if you need more words to express it, please do. And then it's quite a quick thing. So just let it flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't even worry if it makes sense or not. Just really sometimes we try to make sense. Yeah. Let it happen.
Just see what happens to Joe. Just as a pointer, sometimes when I've done this before, Joe has ended up as a hench cat with pictures to match. So there's that.
And obviously Beth, the lover of cats, had nothing to do with that.
Nothing. Not influenced by seeing the cat on calls with me at all. Not at all.
So if I can ask Radhika to bounce everybody into chat for breakout rooms for 10 minutes, and then I think it's all kind of automatic, so it starts going down and you just get kicked off and put back here.
Do we just want to remind people to screenshot the chat?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so screenshot the chat to keep as a reference.
Yeah, so it'd be nice if we can chat about the drama that occurred.
Yes.
Okay, everyone's going in now.
Okay.
Excellent. And see, this works differently to Teams, which is nice because it looks.
We've got one more person looking to.
Yeah, it looks like Tanya's not. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Pulled in.
Okay. Oh, it worked.
Oh my God. And so they can't hear us?
No, I don't think so.
That is hilarious. I'm going to start doing breakout rooms on all my workshops.
They are great. They are great. And when you're developing narratives, it's just nice to give people a space to go into. To just let those creative juices flow. And it just occurred to me that we're still live, I believe.
Yes
we are.
Oh yeah, we're still live on YouTube.
We're still live. But I think it's a really great everybody else in the country knows all about these breakout rooms except to me, so I'm going to stop talking about them because it just shows I'm just showing up my ignorance.
Well, no, you say that though, but I think it's the idea of, and again with writing, if we're talking about writing, it's the idea of using them for something a bit more creative, so that they can be, you know, we have just lived through this, you know, this online world where we're all sort of like going around each other's houses but virtually. So yeah, I just think it's really nice to start leveraging some of this for more creative endeavors.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're spot on there, because you know, I think when we all started using Zoom and Teams online and all of that kind of thing, it was out of necessity, and so we were just using it for what, you know. And I noticed that in September, I think it was August or September now, on Zooms you can even add certain apps as well. So things like, I think things like a Miro board, or, you know, I'm not being I don't get you know, any money from Miro board, but you know, that sort of thing. I'm thinking,
or Padlet. We've used Padlet quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, so it's now time that we're sort of all familiar with how it works, to kind of be able to do something a bit more interesting.
Well, those and also those collaborative platforms are really good. I remember I was running some schools workshops, and it's quite nice to just let people do what they want with them, but then you do also run the risk of, depending on who your audience is, or you know what the kind of groups that you're working with. I remember working on a workshop, and it was great. There's an entire classroom that had joined, but they had the Padlet, and clearly somebody was going to get in trouble after the workshop because they were inside a school 16 to 18, and he started taking pictures of his tutor, his teacher, and put it on the Padlet, and then it was up there for a few minutes, and then suddenly it disappeared. It was just like, oh, somebody's going to get a bit of a chat to after that. But you know, it's there's a lot of really nice collaborative tools, or ones that haven't, you know, previously been thought of being used in that way, and it's just it is a really nice way to do it.
Yeah, can I ask you, in terms of, because you're teaching actual real life students at university,
people and their coughs,
so, and it's digital storytelling, that sort of thing. So how do you get people to, you know, so they to kind of start generating material?
Quite a few different ways. So chat room drama is always quite a nice one. I quite like as well giving people quite set parameters. So we do, like I say, because it's digital storytelling, and it tends to be, you know, digital arts, digital storytelling, so a lot of visual work. Do things like genre swap.
Okay, tell me a bit about
so
that.
in a genre swap, we would ask people to, there's some really good trailers, and one would use an example, which is, so it's a trailer for Mrs. Doubtfire, and then it's the trailer for Mrs. Doubtfire re-edited as a horror film. So the treatment of it, and the kind of visual glitches, and the edits that they choose, and some of the edits are exactly the same as what's used for the normal trailer. But then you change the music, you change, you know, you can't change the lighting because it's from the original film. You change the you know, you change the music, you change sort of like the glitches, and suddenly, you know, Robin Williams goes from, you know, a loving dad who just wants to spend more time with his children, to a stalker who might murder them at the end of the film. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, those sorts of things. And then another nice exercise, because I always think sometimes creativity comes from restriction, or it can do. So we do pieces of work that set parameters. So we'll say, right, you're going to give, and that parameters might be a deadline. So it might be, you've got, you know, half the time that you thought you were going to have to do this project, or you've got, we've teased the project, and you've gone away and had to think about it. And now we're telling you that actually we're telling you what story to base it on, or we're telling you what audience to aim it for, or we're telling you what technology to try and prep it for. And I think sometimes, you know, giving those sorts of parameters or with all these are the story elements, or your story has to have, you know, a bear on a beach in winter.
You do. And what do you find with your students? What kind of technologies are they drawn to when they're expressing themselves digitally?
They tend to, so if it's depending on what program they're enrolled to, they tend to use that technology or want to use that technology. So the idea is very much about engaging them with future technologies much more. So we give them work and we talk about, you know, how would you engage with working with QR codes, or how would you engage with working with AR technology, so augmented reality, or how would you engage with doing a VR technology, or for instance, we'll sort of like, well, how would you imagine this story in a VR world? And a student took, you know, students do things like they'll take a horror film and they go, right, I'm going to place you inside the horror film. So you can watch the personally. I wouldn't. Well, we talked about horror films the other day, didn't we? So that would be your absolute nightmare. But so his idea was like, well, it's for Halloween. And he was like, right, I would place it so you are inside the film watching Michael Myers, and you've got to hide when he walks past. So it's like.
No.
Yeah, that idea of giving those parameters, you know, reimagine this with this. Now what is it like? And I think that's a very creative process in itself, to just kind of give to change people's expectations and go, okay, we've done it for where I used to work as well, and for different levels, and it was just like, okay, take that. So even if it's something like a character design brief, take that character that you're familiar with and that you love, now reimagine it for a younger audience or an older audience or a completely different audience. Because we talk a lot in education about, particularly with working in digital arts, about people recognizing that they are not designing for themselves.
Yes.
And that unless you are a very particular kind of artist, you are designing for public consumption, and therefore can't afford to alienate audiences. I remember a student many years ago who designed a game level and thought it was hilarious that it was pitch black and he was the only person who knew his way around it, but it was no fun. It was absolutely no fun. But he knew where everything was, and he designed it for himself, and getting across that idea that it's for public consumption. And therefore it's not going to be for every audience, but it's going to be very important to have somebody that you're trying to appeal to outside of yourself. And as creatives, you know, because we get so attached to our projects, sometimes you don't know how much they're going to resonate with people, and then when they do, or especially if it's a really personal project, because I think sometimes particularly we tend to, you know, us global majority people tend to explore stories from a very personal perspective, and you don't know how that's going to resonate outside sometimes. So that's really important. And just everyone should be popping back in now from their dramas very shortly.
Yes,
got a couple of seconds, but
okay.
Should I close them all now?
Yes,
because so that people can pop back in to see us
mid-sentence,
probably. That's
always
the beauty
the way.
of this.
It's
You're
always
like,
the way, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd be like, but I haven't finished with Joe.
I love that. I haven't finished with Joe.
Joe always goes on some major adventures in these scenarios.
Fantastic. Okay. Right.
I think they've been given the option to come back, so they're obviously still engrossed, but
no, they don't get an option. Bring them back in. It's great. I mean, it's great. It's interesting, really, because we've just sort of jam-packed so much. It would be nice for them to be able to work on them for much longer. I think initially when we thought, an hour and a half, that's plenty of time, and then when we start
thinking of like doing like nice creative stuff, and you're like, that takes a bit of time.
Yes, it does. So they will come back eventually.
Here they all are.
Here we are. Here we are.
I like the way that Hafsa's like, no.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking we didn't screenshot it.
Well, you'll have to use your memory.
Oh God.
We
okay.
might be able to. I don't know if we can capture it from this end either, but we
Right.
will find out. But it
We'll
is
find
just
out if
it's
we can
it's
capture, yeah.
playful. It's
Oh, we've
meant
got
to be
it. Oh,
fun.
okay. It's on the main chat anyway. How is
Is
ours?
it?
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, ours went on the main chat.
Okay, I'll have a look because my main chat doesn't seem to be updating as quickly. But if it's on the main chat, that's great. If we get to see what Joe was up to on the main chat in a minute.
Okay.
Mine sometimes I don't know if my chat's giving me what I would like it to.
I think it's probably only on the main chat for the people who've been in the breakout room. So yeah.
Okay,
maybe
well that's
it'll be
good because they've got it as reference to talk about it anyway, which is
Yeah.
really important. So I'm going to press an X here. I hope it doesn't break the whole of Zoom. We're still here. Yes.
Let's not break Zoom.
Oh no. Okay, so let's hear some of these stories.
What did you do with Joe?
What did you do, Joe?
And little faces.
We had a lot of fun with Joe. It was getting sinister towards the end, I have to say.
Oh,
So, this
Fantastic.
is how it all came together, and it was actually inspired by Tanya's computer playing up. So that was the first line. We said, Joe's playing up, not behaving at all. And I don't know why. The other day, we were going to a party for his friend's 21st birthday celebration, and we met his ex there, who was very upset at seeing his mobile phone with a photo of another rabbit, bigger than the one we had in our bed. OMG. Yes, and OMG stands for 3 different words. So yeah,
We got it.
It
could have been WTF after that, but we
we
had to come back in.
It would have hit the parameters for sure.
Fantastic. Anybody else like to share?
So we ours took a run through the forest. So it starts off, Joe's red dress ripped upwards quickly, revealing bones for legs. Bones, I tell you. Really? Not fat? The mirror doesn't lie. The forest darkened. Joe was frightened. Feet squelched through mud. Legs mud splattered. Red dress, bony legs, no fat. What a date. She started to run. A garland of leaves cushioned her tired feet, bathed her brow. The moon-kissed lips were tender to touch. She smiled, satisfied. Dying inside, no, happy.
that sounds even better. That sounds even better.
Who was in that group? I'm curious.
Yeah,
it's great. It almost sounds like it's written by one person.
Yeah, that sounds quite good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was Joanna and Maya were in that group with me.
Yeah. So, did you guys like working with Joe?
Yeah.
Good job, really.
Yeah, I think you feel a little bit daunted right at the very beginning because things don't come that fast, but it starts to flow.
Yeah. When I run this exercise, sometimes you can tell, it's particularly if you're, because I run it with different age groups, and you can tell sort of say, like, so younger participants will try and keep looping it back to the idea of what they want it to do. So you can, they kind of like, so it'll be things like, Joe went to the shops, went to the house, and it's like, can Joe just get out of this loop and you let Joe, right. But then they kind of go, okay, this isn't going anywhere, let's start again. And, you know, or they'll go really bizarre. So they'll say things like, Joe, in fact, they didn't flat out tell me the story, but I remember one group once kind of went, Joe turned into a homeless woman called Mike, took a pill and started licking other homeless men's faces. It's just like, Okay, so that's where Joe went. Joe's
Yeah.
also been for quite bad haircuts quite often. I don't know why, Joe goes for bad haircuts, but it's nice because it becomes a collaborative experience automatically. And obviously you're not school children, so you will not try and make Joe like lick homeless people.
Yeah. There was 3 groups altogether, weren't there? So we've heard from 2. Do we have one more?
We had rooms 2 and 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it was
sorry,
only
just
2.
two.
But I think it was 2
Just 2
rooms,
groups,
but
yeah.
named 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had some kind of good questions sort of bolted onto this exercise. That's Marcia. I'm just going to let her in. She did say she was going to be late. Bolted onto this exercise.
Yes, I did. I was like, thank you for that. I was like, did I?
Yeah. Have you got them in front of you?
I do have them in front of me. I'm just
Fantastic.
moving my thing to screen.
Because I think
Yeah,
that's
so
worth examining.
yeah, so I wanted to know what you felt were the, well, I'll give you, so 3 things really. What do you felt were the limitations? What did you think were the freedoms of an exercise like that? And what do you think of the flow? Are you what are you now happy with and or not, having worked with Joe?
Feel free to write in the chat.
Yeah, but I think everyone's. I think one thing working with Joe is everyone's just chatting now, aren't they? So
yeah.
You turn your mics on. So your limitations, if you thought, if you felt there were limitations, the freedoms, anything that you might not have already, that you think actually now that you've asked it more specifically, because I know you've talked about. Hafsa, you said it felt quite daunting at first.
But I think one of the freedoms in it is that it makes you not overthink stuff. So, you can get really roped into a beginning, middle, end, does it make sense and all the rest of it. But actually there was a playfulness to this. And I think that was a really good, way of feeling free when doing it. And I like the fact that there was this limitation of 3 words only, because it makes you think of potency, I guess. Rather than just adding extra words here or there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I would say a limitation for me was that I was trying to, I really wanted it to make sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to make it so hard for everybody else in the group by completely going off tangents.
Yeah. I think, and I think it kind of, sometimes it can tap into, because like just sort of say, if I work with younger audiences, they don't care if it makes sense. they just want to have their story running through somehow. And sometimes that can work really nicely. And sometimes it can go, quite horribly wrong. But again, it's that, I think it's about the options. I think the options are really important. And what did you think about the kind of collaboration? I mean, because I'm making a mass assumption here, but I think you're all strangers to each other. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah. So how did that part of it go?
I thought it worked quite well, because I personally don't tend to go for collaborations. I like to work on my own. But I thought our group worked extremely well. It was really good. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I think we're probably ready to, unless anyone's got anything else.
Yeah. I mean, we hope that just gives you, of course, it's only a sort of little tip of an iceberg of what you can do in terms of chat rooms and those kind of forum style and templates. But the point is just to give you a way in to kind of say, oh, I don't have to think about this literally. I can perhaps, look up behind the curtain and see what else is going on. And I really like that Hafsa came up with this kind of idea of the limitations creating a potency, which is really lovely. I'm adding somebody else in.
Can I raise hand? Yeah. I was trying to raise my hand. Yeah. So is this a way then? Say if I was to start what I think a Twitter story, I can start to write, say, 5 sentences of a story one day, and another day, or a couple of days later, I write another 5 sentences of this, bit like a serial drama.
Well, you could, yes. I mean, if you could do it, especially if you kept it as a thread. So you know what I mean by that. So you would use your 280 characters, and that would be what you would put up. And then the next time you would go into the comments and you would continue. And I think that there's a sort of people now put one of, so it's designed, it's by design. You know how many, it's not just you just turning up and making it up. You're designing. As writers, we start to become designers. You know, how many 280 character segments is the story going to take place? And then you have to also consider your audience in Twitter. Why Twitter and not Instagram or Facebook? Why have limited? You know, asking those questions. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it could just be simply because you've got 1 million followers and everything you say, you know, is amazing. But it's you might also want to have a look at why that platform fits with whatever you want to say. So I just wanted to put that digital storytelling workshop that Beth led then, just for people that were just popping in at the end there. And I'm going to move on to talk about myself, my favorite subject.
Why not?
Why not? Okay, so I'd mentioned earlier, I'm not really. I'd mentioned earlier that that I think at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I began a sort of exploration of a digital world, looking at how, as a writer who just thinks about things like, you know, I have a Kindle, but I love a proper good old-fashioned physical book. But how I could start, if I'm writing for young people, how I can engage with young people, especially since, you know, I was reading a lot of comments that people were making, go, oh, nobody reads anymore, the young people, blah, 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 blah. And I looked at my kids who were teenagers at the time, and I think, well, they read plenty. They're just not reading the stuff that you're publishing. But, you know, it's not that they're not engaged. And so I was kind of trying to think, you know, what would that look like? So am I sharing my screen, people? Yes, I am.
You are. Yeah.
So I decided, and there are lots of other sort of open source tools for nonlinear stories, or choose your own adventures, or you may have called them twister plots. So this isn't the only one, but I picked this one because it was, for me, it just seemed to be at the time the most accessible, I think. And I'm just really showing you this as just a kind of visual reference of what it looks like. And so the blue page with all the little boxes, as you can imagine, it's a kind of, you have one idea, one paragraph, and then you have a choice, and that choice splits into 2, and so on. I'll go into a little bit, but like I said, that's just really a visual reference. And the other thing I liked about Twine is you really didn't need to learn any code. I mean, for me, it was still quite complex, because it was sort of going back, you guys won't remember, but back in the days when you used to have to put like parentheses, bold, close parentheses, and you know, and all of that kind of thing. So I will move quickly on from that. Now let's get to the next slide. So what I'd like to do is, we're going to go straight. The best way of getting your head around this is having a go. So we are going to do an exercise. Now, I wonder if it's better to show you. Okay, I'm going to show you something. So let me have a look. I'm just going to give you a sort of example here. So let me just pop. Just bear with me. Believe it or not, I did actually. I'm going to stop sharing that. I did actually plan this beforehand. No, it's disappeared. Okay, there we go. All right. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Don't worry. I am going to just show you what this looks like, because it took me ages, but it is actually quite basic, but it might help if I can show you what it looks like. So here we go. All right, so you should be looking at Changeling by Michaela Schondler.
Yeah.
I decided to publish on it's a free platform called textadventures.co.uk. There's loads of them on it, and it just allows me to, that was the only picture I had on my, I don't know, it just allows me to kind of have it there and do things like this and play it. So play online, see how simple it is. So for example, here we go, please work. So it starts with an itch behind your ear. The skin gives way, peeling and flaking like a snake sloughing its dead skin, and so on. And then we go down to the end of that paragraph, and there is something else. There is a tingling sensation behind your ears, and you tentatively touch the crescent-shaped openings. Bile rises up into your throat, and you can feel your heart beating hard against your chest. No, it can't be. You touch them again, and you know what they are: gills. And then you have two choices. Do not waste time. Grab your coat and hunting pack and leave, or take a few minutes to gather some food and a flask before leaving. I'm going to press that one, and then we have the next. Now, bearing in mind that there's also a
second choice.
So that's kind of my visual representation of what I wanted to show you. I think you kind of got it there. I'm just going to do that, and I am going to now go back to my slideshow with the actual prompt. So I'm going to go into the prompt. Now we have 10 minutes of this prompt, and basically what I want you to do is to see how many, in 10 minutes, to see how many kind of
choices,
I call them
branches, yeah.
Branches, thank you. That you can, the language thing, I tell you, I'm a writer, not a speaker. So how many branches that you can make. Don't worry about spelling, grammar, or anything, just have fun with it. So your opening paragraph is, you vow to drive your beat up, sorry excuse of a car into a lake as soon as you get home. It is a 10-mile trudge back to the petrol station you've just passed. You see a bicycle by the side of the road. It is brand new. Write two different choices that your characters can make. So I am going to set a timer for 10 minutes.
Cool.
And then, yeah, go for it. I'll see you guys at the other side. And if anybody has any questions, just put them in the chat.
Or yeah, or we're not going anywhere.
No.
Would you want us to carry on the story in first person? Yeah.
In first person, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, sorry, Michaela. I was just going to ask you. So you've done this text adventures exercise. How different is that to how you'd written previously?
Well, it was laborious, because normally you decide what you're going to do, and you just kind of carry on one single thread. I mean, what I did really enjoy about it, I didn't enjoy the technical writing in the actual machine of, not a machine, the software. I didn't really like that, because I found that very laborious. But what I did like were the choices. And I remember being in single digits and loving what we used to call twister plots.
Right.
And I just adored them. So for me to do that, I was very excited, and I wasn't, aware of them beforehand. So, I mean, I know that actually when we first started computers and websites and stuff, there was actually quite a lot of stuff going on in terms of text adventures and things like that. So it wasn't anything new, but for me, it was a kind of really nice thing to do. It is a first draft, and I haven't developed it further. The thing about Twine is that it's no longer a live, it's sort of like it's an archive now, so it's really difficult to, so I was hoping I'd be able to put it in my on the website. And oh yeah, hold on my website, and it was impossible to do. And also, in order to play it, you need to have the software as well. So that's why I ended up using the textadventures.co.uk, which was just really great. And also it was lovely to be able to read other people's work, which of course, you know, people get really complicated, and you can put like you can, I suppose you can do puzzles in them, you can do loads of stuff, which is kind of interesting. But I just wanted to sort of have a play with what, you know, what I could do, and actually the idea that I could create a spin-off to an actual kind of novel, print novel, that somebody could actually would engage with beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, because when we were developing this as well, we talked about, you know, other, like I said, I will often refer back to the fact that I'm a gamer. So you know, there's different approaches in there. There's text adventures in there as well, except they're not as like when you mention puzzles, they're very puzzle driven. You're in there to find out, you know. So text-based games, that's how they started before they moved on to 8-bit, etc. But there's something, and they operate slightly differently, because you have to give the right response to be able to move on. Otherwise, you know, the AI, for want of a better word, the database just keeps kind of going, you know, I don't like, it will give you some quite funny answers, and then eventually go, I don't understand. But the nice thing about this is it's more like decision-based gaming. So there's a few games that I've played in the past that are very indicative of that, of the genre, where and games that I like, for instance, are ones that are very narrative driven. And you know, when I'm working with students, they're like, oh, do you play Call of Duty? Do you play? I'm like, nope. And I'm not allowed you're not allowed to talk to me about it either, you know, because I don't, you know, it's not a game, you know. Or if I'll say, well, I play the story, they're like, oh, do you mean the campaign? I'm like, no, the story that the developers wanted you to play, that's the bit I play. The online is basically, you know, where, you know, that multiplayer online is user demand. I actually like the story that they came up with in the first place. So anything
that's really interesting.
Yeah. So anything
it's called a campaign. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so for instance, when people have kind of come through the first person shooter route, so you know, your Battlefields, your Call of Duty, your you know, your Gears of War, those games always have a really solid story that with really good characterization. However, a lot of gamers just play those kind of games in online modes, multiplayer, you know, multiplayer games, MMOs, and they're just interested in the online. So a lot of games that had been narrative driven in the past. So I am a massive fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, because it's in this incredibly rich world that has kind of pandered more to audiences and become a bit more about you know, just churning a bit like FIFA, just churning out every year the next one. But there's always a story element where, so the best sort of part of the franchise for me is like, so they have the first game and they had the second one, and then they had 2 iterations after that second game where you followed this one character and you basically watched him grow up. So it is this kind of Assassin's Creed, and it's a really good and it's one of the links for later on, actually, when we talk about transmedia. So story worlds and universes that have got books, that have got games, that have got films, that have got television series. So it's this incredibly rich world, and you know, sometimes my worlds collide quite a lot when I'm sort of like from the media that I consume. So I remember being in the cinema watching a Bond film, and it was one of the Daniel Craig ones, and I can't even remember which one it was, but I remember watching it and then going, oh my god, that's the bazaar out of Assassin's Creed. So but yeah, that idea of narrative, and then the games that resonate with me are games like, there's one called Heavy Rain by Quantic Dreams, and it's basically a film noir, and it's got some quite heavy themes, and quite sophisticated themes, and it's much less a kind of I'm going to run around shoot people, and much more an actual experience, because you have these times to choose that make the next decision, and then it plays out based on that decision. So that's where a text adventure for me is kind of nicer than a text-based game,
right? Okay,
because you are kind of like following these branches, and you're not just kind of going, you've got, you know, because in a game scenario they'll be like, you've gone wrong, try and give me a response that I understand, because the database has only got so many responses sitting behind it. But this idea of like going down all these potential paths is like a more exciting prospect, I think, sometimes. But yeah, I just consume all sorts of media, and sometimes I lie and say that I don't play games all the time. I literally play something every day, because even if it's, because when my students kind of go, what games are you playing at the moment, or do you play games? I'm like, not during term time. And what I mean is I don't play my console games during term time, because I need time to sit with them and sort of like delve into the world. But I've always got something that I'm doing.
You've always got something on it.
My caveat's about to kick in, because the cat's just climbed on the printer.
Okay,
I don't
so
know
here
where
we
he's
go.
going
Yes.
next.
Who knows? Who knows?
So I may just very, very briefly, because everyone's got about 2 more minutes, haven't they?
Yeah, we've got about one more minute.
Right, okay. So he seems to be clear of space, so he doesn't, I think at least his tail might make an appearance in a moment, unless I can convince him to jump onto the floor rather than onto the desk.
And onto the
I'm sorry, I'm just going to get him, because otherwise
that's okay.
I'll just slide over here for a second.
Okay, I'll stick you on mute. I've put you on mute, Beth. I didn't know whether we were going to hear screams from a cat.
No screams. It was just a fairly quick intervention to stop him from climbing behind my second screen.
See, it's all kind of drama here. It's not just drama that we're writing, digital. There's kind of real life, reality show, cat versus human. Okay, so we're coming to the end. If you just start to finish your sentence or your thought. And there we are. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And then give you guys a minute or two and ask, how did that go? How did that feel? How did you all get on? Hafsa's nodding her head.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the fact that there could be options. And for some reason, that just opened my mind up in different ways.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
How about you, Joy? Sorry, I saw that Anna was about to say something.
Yeah, no, just saying that it's fine. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Yeah, good.
Beth.
I was going to ask, how many sort of branches did people develop?
2, was it 2? Oh, sorry. Maybe I misunderstood this. I gave my character 2 options.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Anyone else? How many options did you get down to?
2.
2.
Yeah.
And how involved were they?
Quite.
So does anyone want to share what happened after they what some of the options were about after they saw the
if
bicycle?
anybody fancies reading,
Yeah,
please,
I'll
that
read.
would be great. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, so option one. Actually, okay, option one. Okay, read this one. My chanced upon the bike by the side of the road. This is a godsend, he thought, sent directly from heaven. Just what he needed to make good his escape. He looked at the bike, stared at the bike. He looked around nervously to see if anyone was watching. Could be a trick, he thought. To scare me, capture me. That's the first option.
Okay.
Second option. Might chanced upon a bike, brand new too, by the side of the road. Whose bike is it? He wondered. He looked at it closely, bent his head as low as he could go to get a better look at the name on the bars, because there was a name. That meant the bike had an owner. It belonged to someone. Is that person around? Why did they leave the bike here? Where could they have gone? Not right leaving a bike like this lying around, he thought to himself. Not right at all.
Brilliant, thank you. Anybody else want to share there?
Can I share?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So option one is you eye up the bicycle, wondering where you've seen it before. The silver thin blades of the wheel rims slicing through a memory, and it hits you hard. It's hers, Carol's. The skinny oatmeal latte drinking size 6 mum, always on time at the school gates, flirting with Matt whenever he picks up the kids. It's definitely hers. A one of a kind, she said. You look around. No one's here. Maybe she's gone for a quick wee behind the fence, away from the road for privacy. The bend of the country lane isn't too far. You stop the car, reverse 10 yards, press your foot against the accelerator, and smile with all of your teeth as you feel the crunch beneath your tires. That will help her do her 10,000 steps today.
That is evil.
Like the smile with all your teeth, because we all know what that feels like.
Yeah. Brilliant.
What
was your next option?
Maybe this is the sign that your therapist has been talking about. He did say, look out for what joins you on your path. You stop the car, get out, look around. Why is this bike here? Surely no one would just abandon it. You wait 5 minutes. That's okay, isn't it? Fair. Before you gingerly sit on the seat. This hurts. You would definitely need a padded seat. You ask yourself, can you? Just take it? Don't you deserve it? Have you not been through enough? You look at the car, look at the bike, pedal a little forward. The wind rushes through your hair. You carry on, the car becoming a small pinprick as you travel the road ahead. Life will be different now.
Good.
I like that. I like that.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else like to share? I think we could probably do one or two.
Yeah.
A few lines. It's okay if you don't want to share. That's absolutely fine. Okay. So we've got just having a look at our slides here. One of the things that we wanted to share with you guys as well was actually to give you, and Beth has been very generous with her resources, so to give you some, she's got a load. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like gold. Loads of references basically. Perhaps you can take a screenshot, or here we go. Are we looking at that? Okay.
We are. If we're going to, so if we're going to presentation mode, then it will be nice and big.
Okay, should I do it that way?
Yeah, because if somebody wants to take a screenshot, then it will just be a little bit clearer.
Thank you. Okay. So have I come now to the beginning?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just as a recap
You know, just
like
in case,
like every good educator, we
you
should,
know,
this is what we've
exactly.
done.
So just to recap what we've done, this has been deliberate, of course. Here we go. Right. So I think, yeah. So so if you take a screenshot, and it just gives you a little sprinkling of bits and pieces. I've also included something. Could you sort of maybe chat a little bit about Zork, because I don't really know
I think
much
we might
about
have
it.
included Zork twice as well, which is cool, just to like underpin Zork. So Zork is it's an interactive fiction. So when I was talking before about text-based games in the gaming world, so Zork was developed between, I think, 1975 and 1979, and it's that interactive fiction. So it's actually you know, that kind of like really, what I like about it is it's this really expansive world, but it's text-based. So it's literally just old school. It used to run in DOS, and it's just, and it's been kind of like repackaged so that you can get versions of it that run in your browser.
Can you just tell us what DOS is?
DOS is, I'm showing my age. So DOS is what the computers, before you had an operating system, and you used to have to open up your computer in DOS,
right?
Which is just that black screen that you see in, you know, like war games and 1980s films, of just that kind of like white text on a black screen, and then came Windows. So as the kind of like operating system, so you boot it up into Windows. But it used to be, I had a computer that you'd have to like you'd open up DOS, and then you'd load Windows like you would load a program. So a lot of these text-based adventures, because of when they happened in that system, so like at the base of the operating system. And Zork was sort of like lived in that world. But it's this idea that it's an interactive fiction, and it was developed by a bunch of guys at MIT. And it was as a following on. It wasn't the first one actually, but it was. It offered basically a more sophisticated text input system and response to input than ones that had become before it. So you start in a field, and you have to type in what you want to do. So you sort of go left, go right, and then you don't know where it's going, and you have to kind of like navigate this world via text and visualize what you're seeing. So if you go in one direction, you go into a house. If you go in another direction, you end up in a forest, and you have to, and it's still a game. You still have to find things. So you find, you know, climb trees, or, you know, but it's things like a little bit like the text adventure. You see a pile of leaves, and you decide what to do, and you kind of go jump, and it goes, and it just sort of says no. You know, sometimes it will give you a funny response, and then you type things in until you figure out what it wants you to do. So it's quite a bit of a puzzle.
There's lots of kind of puzzly bits and pieces, and I've included as well. There was a very interesting article. I think it's a teachable website, or it's a kind of teachable website called masterclass.com, and it was a free article about non-linear narrative. And there's an article from Vogue talking about poets of Instagram. You probably all know about Rupi Kaur. Choice of games, that's another some of these are interesting, if only just to sort of check them out and pick a couple that you might like, or that you just are curious about, and see what inspires. Because in relation to the competition we've got running, we're not expecting, some of these things have been, people have worked on for a very long time, so we're not expecting bells and whistles or singing and dancing, but we are wanting to stretch your curiosity about what's out there and what you can play with,
and how to leverage things.
Yes, I think that how to leverage things,
how to leverage the digital.
And I'll just put you to the next slide, which should be, so another one for a good screenshot would be this one here, and that's got a bit more kind of writing about stuff.
Yeah, so that it's that idea, obviously, because my background is that kind of is much more in that sort of visual digital. So this is looking at how some of these new technologies are affecting how we how we talk about narrative, how we use narrative. We've got a lot of things. We have got AR technology, we have got VR technology, we have got QR codes, and they change the way that people experience narrative. He derails me.
I just heard the cat.
Yeah.
And I think that also in terms of how we're now getting to be more playful and doing different things with the platforms, is that there's a lot of software and new inventions coming out of our use of it. And I think as people of color, if we stand back and let other people make those decisions and leverage them in whatever they want, we don't get our say.
And I think it's important not to have people speak on our behalf or tell 100%. Our narratives for us, or assume what our narratives are,
which they will if we're not in those spaces. And I don't subscribe to the idea that when people say, well, there just isn't any Black writers doing A, B, and C, that's not a thing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I think we'll go on to talking about I just want to sort of hand it back to you guys really, and ask if anybody has any other questions about the competition, about what we've gone through today, about the cat.
I can introduce him because I think he's going to introduce himself. He's giving me those little I'm about to eat you eyes.
Hafsa.
Yeah, I was saying that I know this is a little bit slightly off tangent, but in the lockdown, I set up something called the Poetry Health Service, and it's an interactive digital tool using Twilio and Twine. And I feel really daunted by getting to grips of the technicalities of it. So sometimes I can be quite lazy and just thinking, okay, I'll get somebody else to do it. But the workshop's really making me feel that actually I want to learn that stuff myself, to be able to tell my own stories. So
yeah. What can you just put in the Hafsa, can you put in the chat the platform? Because I think
so it's,
I heard of that. I saw that.
And it's an interactive tool that you go on and you answer a few questions and you're given this poem, and then you can send me a haiku back. But I wouldn't, even now when I want to build on it, I would still have to go back to the creators because I don't know how it works. So I'm just wondering what there is out there to kind of help us have more ownership over the creating side of things. And do we need to know those things to enter the competition?
Okay, all right, I'm going to answer Hafsa, but I'm aware that she has also put up a hand. So no, you don't need to know anything. We don't know what we're going to find, and we have a very loose remit of what we're looking for. We're looking for, Beth, originality.
We are looking for, I knew I should have loaded the thing. So we are looking for originality. We are looking for not in any particular order, theme. So what themes? We're looking for use of format. We're looking for your technique
and writing craft,
and your writer's craft.
So we don't know, we haven't got an idea of what a win. There's 3 winners, which I just love the fact that there's 3 winners. I mean, come on. Yay. So there's 3. Radhika's just put the link to the competition in the chat as well. So so no, but the other you mentioned something else. I don't actually think that you do always have to know everything, and I think as sometimes I was at a conference last week, and a group of us black women were talking about why is it that we have to have every qualification, every skill set out there? You know, why are we always trying to do things by ourselves, you know? And it's like, we don't need to do things by ourselves. I mean, I'm smiling because I know there's somebody in here that was at that conference and knows exactly what I'm talking about, because I think she brought it up. And it is so important that we don't always drag ourselves down trying to do everything. However, it is important to have an idea, and a good idea of at least what that software does, what it can do, and you know what you need, a sort of general idea. And there are things out there. So I don't know if you've heard of tech pixies.
No.
So there's tech pixies, and they often have kind of I'm trying to think of the word of it. Sometimes they will have programs, but sometimes you have to pay. It just depends. They do some free stuff as well. And I've been going on Enterprise Nation a lot.
Okay.
I mean, obviously this is about media and marketing and stuff, but I'm thinking in terms, tech pixies is probably better in terms of coding and things like that. So it's not something that I would look deeply into, because I'm not, it's not where my skill base is.
But I think it's also important to not be so daunted and have an approach to technical things, to software, to applications, of just kind of like push all the buttons. It's very much my approach to everything, whether it be a cooker or a game. Just push all the buttons and you know, and see what works. And don't I mean, that's why some of these exercises are nice. You know, don't, you know, see what the technology can do for you, not how you can fit the technology.
And don't give up. You know, there's always a point in which you're working on something where you think, oh, I just can't get it. It's crap, blah, 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 blah. All I would ask is just stop for a second, save it, walk away, and then come back the next morning or whatever. But don't give up. Send it anyway, because even if you don't win, we get to see it. Don't we? We get to see it. So by giving up, you rob us the chance of seeing your work. But you know, there might be that engagement means that we can have a conversation about the work that you've done. And if we never actually get to the point, we're so busy trying to be perfect, and we never get to the point where we actually put the work out there, well, we're always, you know, we're always at the back. We never get seen, really. So I would say don't give up. There's nothing is crap. You know, everything is interesting as far as I'm concerned, and yeah, just really have some fun. And I will also add that it's important to know that in Facebook stories and reels and stuff, there is a practice bit on it. So if anybody wants to start telling stories, like you know, telling stories out loud, spoken word, play with those reels, because you can put them on your site and nobody else can see them but you. And if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world.
Did we answer Chi's question, or did she?
I have absolutely no idea.
I think you did. Answer my question. I put my hand down because I realized you'd be answering the question that I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Thank you.
And can I just ask a sort of general question, throw it out there? Are y'all planning to put something into the competition?
When's the deadline?
15th.
Oh, phew, that's something.
15th.
Yeah.
I think I would like to. I think the anxiety I have is that is the one that you've addressed, which is that I have never interacted with on the platform that you're describing. I'm really slow on the uptake with any technology that's not a toaster. So
what
button
social,
down.
I have trouble with that as well.
can I just ask you, Chi, what
Yeah.
social media are you using at the moment?
So that's, it's Instagram that's my main one. I'm not a big person, I'm not a big Twitter person. So initially what I thought was, I might do it as an Instagram feed, or some kind of social media something. And then you talk about Klein and which I've heard, but it's
yeah. I mean, I have to pick up the tree and shake everything out because it would be remiss of me. But have a look at, do that with what you already know. So if Instagram is something you love, I love Instagram, and I'm a big fan of Pinterest as well.
Me too.
The old lady of social media.
Yeah.
So
she's strong though. She's old, but she's strong. She's got something to teach people. Yes.
And so just kind of have a look at what you can do. Have a little play at what you can do with Instagram. What are all the things that you can do? Can you tell a story in 3 acts? I mean, think about, for example, we have the idea that I think it was Forster who wrote Aspects of Fiction, that a story needs a plot. If you say the king died and the queen died, that's not a story. But if you say the king died and the queen died of grief, that's a story. And so if you wanted to sort of do a story in 3 acts, or sometimes they have 6-word stories. There's a famous Hemingway one, so I'm just going to say that, and you can go out and look for it. 6-word stories, Hemingway. And have a look at how you can play with some of these formats and how you felt when you were doing the chat room with that limitation on you, and put some limitations on you, on yourself.
It's like it was when you guys were doing your choices and we were talking about that idea that sometimes those limitations is where that creativity can come from. And like you were saying, Hasta, about that potency that actually kind of gives you get out of your own head. If if anybody puts parameters on you, it's like having to deliver something for a client brief, and they have those parameters, and how creative can you be within those parameters? How much of a story can you tell using a particular platform, and using how that platform can work, rather than sort of saying I've got I think for me sometimes it's rather than just sort of saying I've got this, it's a bit of a synergy. I think that's the thing, and finding that balance to see how those platforms can work for you as well.
I wanted to just share that we of course are going to be able to talk more about this stuff, because it's good and it's interesting, and we're going to be chatting your heads off on the Sunday the 21st of November, and of course that will also be when we will be announcing the winner. I think, Radhika, correct me if I'm wrong, if we'll be announcing the winner of the competitions. Thank you, Radhika. And then we of course have another workshop, which is really important as well. There's other ways to use social media, how to build your presence, how to sell your work, how to create yourself as a brand, that kind of stuff. And that is at 10:30 a.m. on the Sunday. Please get over onto the Black Writers Conference 2021 and get yourself your tickets and booked into that. I think
Radhika's post
thank
put a
you,
link
Radhika,
in the chat to several things, so the Eventbrites, but also the program. So if you want to kind of like click on or save the chat, so that you have those links.
And definitely, it's free, and if you can afford to pay towards it, it would be great. We're asking for a donation of £10, which is absolutely nothing. For some of us, I mean, I would pay £10 because now when I'm used to having to, as a writer, I have to go to conferences and having they always say silver lining, but the the last year or two, I've been able to kind of reach out and network so much more because we've had the ability to do it online. So please do join us that weekend if you can. And if you can, if you can donate £10 towards Common Word, that would be fantastic as well. Radhika, our lovely Radhika, where is she?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Radhika. Can you put your video on, unless you're eating?
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Radhika, for your help tonight. She's been doing everything in the background, making sure that Beth and I don't break the Zoom, and she's done absolutely fabulous. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to Beth as well, who I cannot wait to chat to you more.
Yes.
In that panel on I think it's the 21st.
Sunday
the 21st.
Yeah, we're on the 21st.